cogent arguments in numerous places in the Risale-i Nur, how contrary to truth and reality, how unreasonable and absurd is this idea. So in this final part of the first ray, we have two topics. The first, as I said, it's about the creation, the act of creation, and how it can only be done by the creator of everything. Inshallah, let me read the first paragraph again. The act of creation apparent in beings is such that it demonstrates, it proceeds from a power and will which sees and knows most things, the whole universe, even in each thing, particularly if it's animate, and which recognizes and secures the animate creature's relationship with the universe. It thus demonstrates that it cannot be the act of causes which are material and are not all-encompassing. So there are many important parts here, inshallah. Mustafa Hocam, can we start with you, inshallah?
We have to. Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is reminding me of the 29th word, as I'm sure it's doing for everybody here who has some familiarity with the Risale-i Nur, the connection between existence and life, and especially life. Now, the idea is valid for all existence, but when life comes into the picture, it is even more visible, more like brightly visible. And the idea is that everything in existence is connected to everything else in existence in the created realm. Because when we say everything in existence, we are including in that God too, and of course everything is related and connected to God. But that's a spatial relationship that we can perhaps put on the side for now. But if we start from the smaller version of this, perhaps to have a better understanding of the idea, the concept of ecology, right? Increasingly, every day we are learning something about how everything on this earth is connected to one another. And when we tweak one thing on one side, we cannot not tweak others on the other side. I guess they also call it like the butterfly effect, right? The idea is that if a butterfly were to flap its wings somewhere, let's say in China, that could cause a hurricane in America. They do like computer simulations and things like that to demonstrate that this is possible. So the idea is everything is connected, everything is related to one another. And we have when we look out to the earth, to ourselves, from our fingertips to the stars and galaxies and etc. Everywhere we see harmony, we see order, we see beauty, we see a level of perfection. Now, if everything is connected to one another and everything is in harmony, this means that there is something in charge that is regulating these connections and making sure that while everything is connected, they also remain in harmony. One thing is not preventing another. One thing is not ruining the order in another, right? So why is life more significant? Because things that have life have more connections, more relations, more relationships all around. If it is the example will come later, right? The bee, if it is a piece of rock sitting somewhere on the skirts of a hill, it's a piece of rock sitting somewhere on the skirts of a hill, right? It is connected to the earth that it is standing on, perhaps a few herbs, weeds, trees that are touching it, the air that is touching it, but that's it. That's about it, right? If it is a bee, however, that bee is going to land on that piece of rock, and then it's going to move and fly and land on a flower, then will fly further, travel around the whole day, will associate with the entire hill, the entire perhaps area around the hill, and then go back to its hive. It's going to associate with other bees who have associated with other things all around. So life gives, and then it has needs that go beyond the needs of the rock. It needs to eat. So in order to eat, it needs the pollen from the flower. The flower needs the soil. The soil is made up of elements. Those elements came, that physics is telling us, came into existence with lots of things happening since the Big Bang, right? So we related one bee to everything in existence, but it's not limited to the bee. It is where we see it more, right? Where it is more obvious. So it's something that does not have control over, knowledge of and control over all of these things, cannot be responsible for making anything, because everything is connected to everything. Yeah.
Thank you. When you first said all things are actually related, I never thought it like actually Ustad talks about that, right? I mean, everything is like kind of like brothers in a sense, like siblings, all creation, since we are the creation of the same creator. From that respect, yeah.
The metaphor that I really like that he uses is an orchestra, right? An orchestra has to be playing in tandem. If one of the instruments does not play its part properly, you hear it. The harmony is gone. The entire thing will be ruined, right? So it is like an orchestra of remembrance, dhikr, that he uses.
Thank you. Assalamu
alaikum. I can't really say anything that would add or improve what Mustafa has said. He's reminding me of the Ahad Wahid binary, that the one who creates the tree in my garden also creates the similar tree 1,000 miles away from my garden, and things are joined by their similarities and the different things, the different features and traits which converge on them. And to be able to claim ownership, creative ownership over one being in creation, you have to be able to claim creative ownership over all beings in creation, because of this innate interdependence that Mustafa so eloquently explained. So, this conspectus that you have to have has to be universal conspectus. It has to be a view that incorporates everything in creation, because of this very, very tight interconnectedness. We talked a while ago about one of Ustad's examples, the stones in a freestanding dome. The stones are all together in a very harmonious and equilibrious fashion, and every stone is dependent on the stones around it, and the stones around it are also dependent on that stone. So we have the notion of being hakim and mahkum at the same time. Hakim in a sense of you are the one upon which others depend, and mahkum, you are dependent on others. Now, a stone in a freestanding dome can't actually be both hakim and mahkum at the same time. It can't be subjugated to others and at the same time subjugate others to it. So the whole point of this interdependence is to show that as a collective, all of the stones in that freestanding dome, maybe on one level, the level of, this is a systems issue, and I think Harun has to come in and help us to explain this. At a systems level, the stones in the freestanding dome appear to be subjugating others and being subjugated by them at the same time. But if you step back and you look at the bigger picture, that interdependence shows us that in actual fact, all of those stones are dependent on something other than themselves. So just as we said, you can't be hakim and mahkum in any real sense of the word at the same time. And if you step back, you will see that all of those stones are actually mahkum. They are mahkum to their creator, who cannot be subjugated to anything. And I think this is what, in a roundabout way, I'm just repeating what Mustafa said, maybe from a slightly different perspective. And nothing can really exist without being subjugated to the creator of all things. And therefore nothing can create.
So that interdependence, especially when we talk about living beings, it's so apparent that, it's, for example, even the, just a bee, that insect is dependent on so many things. And it says like that, I'm reading the first respect, the fact that all the other bees throughout the world resembling that particular bee manifest the same act at the same time, demonstrates that the particular and individual act is a tip of a comprehensive act which embraces the face of the earth. Also, connecting it with the second respect, that it's again, talking about dependence on others. In order to be author and of the action directed towards the creation of the bee in question, a power is necessary to know and secure the conditions for the life of that bee and its members and its relationship with the universe.
I like the way that he talks about all of this demonstrates that this particular individual act is the tip of a comprehensive act. So if you're looking just at the stones in the dome, you can identify this notion of hakimiyya and mahkumiyya among the stones. But when you step back, then you realize that all of those stones, this interdependence is there in order to show us that none of them can really subjugate another stone to its own will, and that they are all actually subjugated to the will of one who transcends that whole issue of stones, and dome. So stones and dome, they are all subjugated to him. And you can only understand that if you step back and see, as Ustad says, that these things that we're discussing, they are just the tip. The dome example is just the tip of a larger principle, a wider principle. And that is that all of the particular constituents of the universe are simultaneously subjugated to one will. So then interdependence then becomes just an incidental feature. The real issue then becomes the subjugation of all beings in creation to the will of just one creator.
Mm.
And also to, once again, to point out, with life, that this, comes to even sharper perspective, because living objects, living things do things, right? They don't just stand in one place. And the rock also does things, but that's not as obviously visible to our naked eyes, right? If you were to get into the rock and look at how the electrons are running around the protons and neutrons or whatever, I'm not too good in this, but if you were to see what's happening in the rock, we would see that it is also in motion, it's moving. But when it is life, say a bee, right, or an elephant, it is an act, it becomes an agent, it is doing things before our eyes. So it is not like a picture that is perfectly painted and all the colors are in harmony and it's beautiful to look at, but it's just a picture. It was painted once and it is hanging there on the wall, but rather it is in motion. All of these particular pigments on the picture are simultaneously moving, and while they simultaneously move, the harmony is still preserved.
It's amazing that this preservation of the harmony We've talked of Hafidiyya and Hafidiyya, you know, the preservation. Allah preserves things, but Qayyumiyya, you know, is that feature of the divine character which shows us, I think maybe more than anything else, the preservation of identity over time, as you say. So all of this is going on, all of this is happening, all of this creative power is being shown to us, you know, the interconnections, the interdependence. But you know, this is happening from moment to moment, and to actually attribute that to matter, to a material cause, who cannot bring itself into existence, is laughable. It becomes, you know, increasingly ridiculous to think of it when you actually extend that over time, because we cannot create ourselves, and therefore ipso facto we cannot preserve our identity over time. We depend on one who is outside of that process, who is Qayyum, who is self-subsistent, who is pre and post eternally self-subsistent, in order for our identities and our creation to be preserved from moment to moment. And you bring a very important point to the table there. This is happening over time. And I think Qayyum, one of the best expressions of Qayyumiyya is in this notion of continuation, this continuous process, this continuous creation, this continuous bestowal of existence upon beings by the one who is Qayyum, Hayy Qayyum.
It's, you know, one of the greatest names, right? Ismi Qayyum, as you said, the preservation of identity. You know, Allah Ta'ala creates, gives that thing life, you know, with infinite power. But the fact that He keeps creating that thing and everything at the same time, preserving the identity from moment to moment, like every moment, preserving the identity. And with Mustafa Jam, as you said, like an orchestra, right? Everything is within the harmony. I guess that's why, you know, it's one of the greatest names, Ismi Qayyum.
It is as though, say, I am one individual, one pigment in that, you know, big picture. It's as though when I do something, right, visibly, we are just observing from outside, and it appears that I'm doing something. I'm, you know, I'm driving my car. I turn the key on and I'm driving my car. It appears as though I'm the cause for the car to move, right? If somebody who has no understanding of how a car works and, you know, whatever is happening, just observing these two objects, a human being entered the car, turn the key on, press the gas pedal, and the car is moving, the person may say, well, looks like this car is moving because this other object, human being, entered it and pressed this pedal. So I appear to be the cause in this, right? The thing is, whichever pigment in the picture we look at, it is as though that pigment knows the whole thing, because it never does anything that's going to undermine the overall bigger picture, right? Then Ustad Nursi's point here, right? Then either each and every pigment, each and every particle, each and every, you know, object that's under observation knows the whole thing and has awareness of the whole, has, first of all, has self-awareness, then has awareness of the whole thing, then has knowledge of how the whole thing works, and has power over all, you know, everything, right? But that means everything, the next pigment has power on it, as you know, Kolnojam mentioned, right? Being subjugated and subjugating at the same time, and then it becomes impossible. The mind, the intellect, just does not accept something like this, because everything cannot have power over everything and be dominated by everything all at the same time. If anything here had self-sustaining power, right, then there would have to be some clash of wills, because, you know, I would want to go this way. The car, having, you know, self-sustaining power and its own will, would want to go the other way. So it would be my causality against the car's causality, and we would just be clashing with each other. And then if you imagine everything doing the same thing, it would all go into chaos. The fact that we don't see chaos means that nothing in here has self-sustaining power and influence over anything else. Everything is being regulated by a power outside of what we see here, and that is the only one that has self-sustaining existence and power, and that is the only one whose will is effective everywhere, in everything.
We talked about chlorine and sodium coming together to make salt. And as you've just pointed out, Mustafa, if chlorine and sodium were both autonomous, sovereignty possessing entities with power to subjugate other things, and this is what the naturalists have to believe, otherwise their theories don't make sense, then when chlorine and sodium come together, it's not the fact that they are coming together to make salt. They are actually joining together in what amounts to a suicide pact, because they are coming together to make salt, and in doing so, they have to sacrifice their own existences. Now, who is going to do that? Who is going to do that if they are possessed of this gargantuan power of will? And they have to be omniscient, and they have to be omnipotent, because they have to comprehend the whole of creation, as Ustad points out in another passage. To create one atom, you have to be able to create all of the atoms because of the innate interdependency. Now, which autonomous, omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient being would knowingly and lovingly commit suicide for the sake of something else? It just does not make sense. So it shows that the chlorine and the sodium are both subjugated to something else, to a higher will, who completely transcends this whole universe. And to believe other than this really is to believe in fairy tales. There's no other way.
And if you were to assume that accidentally somehow, one atom of chlorine and one atom of, or maybe two, whatever, atoms of sodium somehow decided to commit suicide, right? If you were to assume that this is accidental, just happened, well, then we look around and it turns out that there are billions of these happening.
Yeah, they're doing it all the time. Why don't they learn from the mistakes of other atoms of chlorine and sodium? You know, they're supposed to be learning from their mistakes. They're supposed to be evolving. And might is right and all of these things, and the survival of the fittest. This is the survival of the most stupid. It's not the survival of the fittest at all. They're not learning from the mistakes of their brother and sister chlorine and sodium atoms. As you've said, that's a great point.
Mustafa, when you gave the example of a car and the driver, like us and our body and animals and their spirit things, did you make an analogy to that?
I didn't think that detail. I just tried to come up with an example. But no, I didn't think about that. That wasn't what I was thinking about. You can also think of this as two objects. One does not get into the other, but two objects interacting, like the sodium and chlorine example, right? That could also be the example. But we can move on from that. I didn't think about it, but we can move on from that.
From maybe if you can look at the chat, inshallah, when you finish translating Masnavi Nuri, inshallah, I will find the English part of it, the English translation. Just like, for example, us, we cannot, like, we as humans, individuals, we are not the maker of our body. It also says that, our body parts, whatever we are made of, let it be, atoms, cells, or, other organs, they cannot be the maker of our body too. Those inanimate beings cannot be the maker of our body.
Yes. So you in the chat mef'ul failsiz olamadığı gibi mef'ulün camit bir cüz'ü de fail olamaz. Right? Yes. So if as something that is done, right? Something that receives an act cannot be without an active agent, somebody who does it, right? An inanimate part of that object cannot be the active agent of the whole thing either. So basically, my finger cannot be what makes me.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
It's quite interesting because Ustad Nursi comes up with little examples and allusions and such as the dome, the stones in the dome, and one reads that, and I remember maybe 30, 40 years ago reading that and yeah, oh, that's interesting. And then you do realize, later on down the line, that his examples are themselves the tip of something much greater, of a principle or of a concept much, much greater. And you realize, this man was, I'm in awe of his ability to encapsulate concepts and subjects in just one or two lines, to crystallize them and to express them in one or two short lines, an example. But you realize that he must have been sort of meditating on that and thinking on that for a very, very long time in order to distill it into such a meaningful and insightful axiom. I mean, his work is full of those axioms, full of those little examples. It's quite amazing what we read when we read the work of this man.
In the chat, Harun Hocam, when we started the panel, he wrote in chat quantum entanglement. I guess he wrote it when Mustafa Hocam was about the first paragraph. Harun Hocam, can you elaborate on that? Quantum.
Assalamu alaikum. As Mustafa Hocam was talking about this, everything is connected to everything. Nicely, I was watching a video about quantum entanglements morning today. So I was so amazed with this notion. Like, a straightforward example is that if you have two electrons, two particles, let's say, and these two electrons, just take them, one of them to your lab and take the other one to another galaxy. And since they're entangled, it is known today that if you know the spin of your electron in your lab, you can definitely know the opposite spin of the other electron in other galaxy. So today with mathematics and physics, we are so certain about this quantum entanglement. So in other words, we can prove what Mustafa Hocam says, mathematically or based on quantum physics. It is so certain, it is in front of eyes, At the particle level, everything is really connected to everything. Even the physicist was really making a comment. If you turn on your cell phone, actually that means you are connecting to every particle in the universe. So I think it's kind of an updated way of expressing this butterfly effect in quantum terms. So it was the point, the term quantum entanglement, to express connectivity.
I mean, something amazing about that is when we see that, or we are taught about it by scientists who have proven it by experiments, right? You take one electron, one thing here, and put it on my desk and put its entangled companion or whatever other part on the desk somewhere in Australia. If I, I'm just using this as an example. It's not the actual like that, but if I were to push it, to the right, its associated partner in Australia also goes to the right or to the left, right? They are somehow connected with one another across space. And it doesn't matter how far that space is. As you said, it may be in another galaxy. Like, this is mind-boggling for us. But the thing is, it's mind-boggling for us because it is not what we have been observing all our lives since we were born in this world, from the time our consciousness started to come into existence to this point. And therefore, that sounds mind-boggling to us. But it doesn't sound or feel or look mind-boggling to me that when I take a cup of water in my hand and lift my hand, the cup of water is lifted with my hand. It's as if my hand and the cup of water are connected, right? If you were to go to the core of this, we would see that, well, my hand and the cup of water is not connected either, right? I appear to be holding it, but my hand finishes with the last atom that is in my hand. And then the bottle starts, and it's difficult to tell like where my hand finishes, where the bottle ends. It goes back to the idea of the causality between the cotton and the fire, right? Imam Ghazali gives it, and then Hume gives it. I bring fire next to a bowl of cotton, and the cotton burns. But is it the fire that burnt the cotton? There is nothing that will allow us to prove that it is the fire that burnt the cotton. The way we don't see the association as if they are touching between the two entangled particles, we don't see the association between the cotton and the fire, because the cotton starts where the fire ends. We see one touching the other, but we don't see one burning the other, because I took the fire away, the cotton is still burning. So if one of the tasks that I see for myself, and I think everybody should do the same, is to try to find that wonder everywhere, because it is wondrous everywhere, right? When I look out the window and see a tree starting to bud its leaves, there's wonder in that. That's an amazing thing. That's as amazing as, I don't like that, if I were watching a mystery documentary about mysterious things happening in the universe, right? That's a mysterious thing happening in the universe. And when I start to see that with that kind of wonder, I start to see the divine everywhere, wherever I turn.
And it's also wondrous to, when you mentioned, harmony and orchestra, like an orchestra, in the universe, the thing that blooming is amazing, harmonious, and wondrous, but also the fact that everything is connecting and moving with harmony, right? Even though we have our own willpower, but everything is connected to one willpower and moved by the same, by the one, right? Purposes and benefits.
The only problem with the conductor of the orchestra example, and it's a brilliant example, is the fact that the naturalists believe that there is no conductor to that orchestra, and that every player in the orchestra is actually writing their own part and inserting their own part into the symphony without any kind of how can I say, consensus, without any kind of agreement with the others. And yet what is coming out of their endeavor is a beautiful piece of music that fits in perfectly in a harmonious and equilibrious way with all of the other players in the orchestra. That just beggars belief. It's just absolutely unbelievable. And yet this is, they believe that. They believe that there isn't a conductor, and there isn't even a writer of that piece of music. There's no composer even. So how can they, I always say, we don't see different things, we see things differently. We see this order, we see this amazing, Mustafa Hoja said we need to marvel because things are wondrous. They're wondrous. So how come some people can, seriously put forward, advocate the theory that there is no composer, that there is no conductor to that orchestra. This can't be to do with intellect. This must be a matter of will, of not wanting to believe. Otherwise, the truth is out there, it's like a brute fact. A brute fact. Everything evinces subjugation. Everything. The universe as a whole is subjugated, is in a state of submission. So to not see that must mean that I don't want to see it. Is that not the case? It still puzzles me how this can be.
They want to enjoy the movie, and to enjoy a movie, you always to some level have to sustain disbelief.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I guess.
It's what they don't know is if they were to not sustain disbelief and disbelieve what is not believable and believe in what is believable, they would enjoy it more.
The thing is, they mystify the creation to the extent that we come away thinking that only these guys, only the scientists, actually know what's going on. They're the only ones who know. They're putting forward all of these ideas, and we can see the beauty and the harmony and the equilibrium just as they can. But because of this, the magic word science and scientific, these are magic words. They become magic words now. As soon as they are uttered, then everyone falls silent in wonder and say, yeah, these guys know what's happening. They are the ones who are at the cutting edge of scientific research. They know what's what. And if they say that there can be no God, there is no God, then why should we not believe them? Because they are the ones who are doing all this research, doing all this scientific work. So it's a double-edged sword. They are actually admitting and acknowledging the beauty and the harmony, but at the same time, they're mystifying it to the extent that everyone believes that they are the only ones who can know the truth. And this is where scientism comes into play, that science has all the answers. In fact, science doesn't even know how to ask, well, scientists don't even know how to ask the right questions, let alone provide us with the answers. So there's something very satanic going on at the same time. How can a biologist, I can't remember what his name was, look at the universe and say that the more I see order in the universe, the more I realize that there is no creator? I mean, come on. What does that mean even? The more I see order, the more I realize that there is no creator. It's just beyond belief, really. And they call us superstitious.
And Mustafa Hocam, what did you mean when you said, to enjoy the movie, we need to pretend,
sustain disbelief? So in most movies, like if it is really good, maybe you don't have to do it as much, but in most movies, there will be things that are not going to be credible. Like if you were to think really deep enough, you would question it. But if you question it, then you would stop enjoying the plot because it wouldn't make sense any longer. So our habit in watching movies or I don't know, like reading fiction is to suppress that disbelief, right? Suppress that this cannot happen.
That's a great example, Mustafa. I'm going to use that if you don't mind.
Sure. I don't have the copyright.
The copyright on so. No, you sit back and you enjoy it. Sometimes I give away the plot in a movie if we're watching, or I say something that brings everyone down to earth, and they say, "Come on, this is a film. You're supposed to enjoy it. Why are you ruining it for us?" Yeah. You're absolutely right. If we really worked with the truth, then it would ruin the movie or the symphony or the piece of artistic expression, whatever it is. It would be ruined for us. So we have to kid ourselves. We have to blinker ourselves, and we have to cover covering the truth. And kavara, kafara, we're covering and we're making kufr. The cover is the kufr,
Yeah. But that's with fiction. With reality, the less we cover, the more we enjoy. But
Yes, yeah,
some,
the other way
people,
around. Other way around, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. But some people think that in order to enjoy, let's say, they need not to obey anything beyond their, human eye, the ego, right? If that becomes your purpose in life, if enjoying yourself as a free, independent agent becomes your purpose in life, then you have to start suppressing some of the things that are obviously visible there. So you need to sustain the incredibility of what you are submitting to, what you are signing up for, so that you can continue enjoying. You have to say, well, there is no creator, therefore I'll go eat this thing that the supposed Hasha creator says is haram, right? I'm going to steal. I want to steal, but if there's a creator, I cannot steal. Therefore, I'm going to suspend the incredibility of the absence of a creator. I'm basically the concept of ghafla, right? I'm going to be heedless. We don't consciously say it, we just fall into it.
Does this explain why a lot of people who believe in God don't believe in hell? Because they want the luxury of believing in God, because it's very difficult to actually disbelieve in God actively. But at the same time, they want to enjoy the movie. They don't want hell to exist. Yeah. And they don't want shaitan to exist, which is, it was amazing. There was a poll done. I can't remember the percentage of people, and I can't remember the demographic either. They asked who believes in God, and let's say like 80% said this, yeah, they do. And then the other question was who believes in heaven and hell, and it was like 40% or something like that. And I'm thinking there's a disconnect here. How can 80% of these people who were questioned say they believe in God, and yet only half of them believe in heaven and hell? Don't these come together as a package? You believe in God, then you have to believe in shaitan. You have to believe in heaven and hell. But they want the luxury of belief, because it's very difficult not to believe. And yet at the same time, as you said, they want to enjoy the movie. And to know that there's hell at the end really, really does ruin the movie for you.
Yes.
I'm going to use that now. So much. Wonderful. Thank you.
Before we finish, I want to read some of the comments. Inshallah, the Fatih says the universe is so vast. The distances between stars are so large that two galaxies can go through each other without or only a few collisions and go their own way. Billions of stars. With the vastness, our Earth has the correct amounts of the elements that are needed to sustain life. Some of these elements came from far away, light years away, stars or supernovas. It is impossible to have this combination by chance without a serious plan. What is in the second respect? We said that, the bee, for example, the author, the maker of the bee, has to have authority over the most of the universe. It's very interesting, Mustafa Hocam and Kolin Hocam, this is, when we look at our body, like there are so many elements, but we have some of the elements like 1 gram or like 20, 30 milligrams in our body, but they are essential to our life. It's so interesting. Those elements are essential to our life. I mean, if we don't have those elements, like we wouldn't survive. And those elements came from other stars, right? It's so interesting. Our Earth has the correct amounts of elements that are needed to sustain life, and those elements came from other stars. And this combination cannot be by chance without a serious plan. Any comments on this, Mustafa Hocam?
Well, I think it's self-explanatory. I don't think it needs more comment, right?
In the last part, inshallah, this is it talks about again the pre-eternity of the things, the atoms and ether, and also in the underlined sentence it says some of them even suppose that it is out of them that the divine works arise. And we can maybe talk about a little bit about the attributes of Allah, the necessity, wujub, maddedan tajarrud, absolute isolation from matter, absolute freedom from space, unity, and these are the necessity of the firmest level of existence, and the state of existence furthest from cessation, and the unity, for example, which is the soundest quality of existence. Yet they attribute pre-eternity and everlastingness, which are the necessarily existent one's most particular qualities and are necessary and essential to him. And they attribute it to things like ether and particles, which are matter that is material, unbounded, and numerous, and the least stable level of existence and the least tangible, the most changing and the most varying and the most dispersed through space. They ascribe pre-eternity to them and fancy them to be pre-eternal, and some of them even suppose that it is out of them that the divine works arise. So it's a comparison between the attributes, qualities of Allah and the matter. Colin Hocam, any comments on it?
Not really. Just to reiterate this point about Qayyumiyya, it's impossible to think that one being could create itself, first of all, but even more impossible to believe that that being could actually repeat the creation over and over again in different forms, in different modalities, with the different configurations from moment to moment. It just beggars belief. And this Qayyumiyya, this continuous creation, this continuous upholding, continuous nurturing, continuous sustaining, adds a different dimension. Obviously, with the dimension we've added is the dimension of time and the passing of time. So the first notion, the notion of self-creation, is totally ridiculous and impossible to believe. But the notion of continuous self-creation is, is just ridiculous. You can't even begin to express how ridiculous it is to imagine that a tiny piece of subjugated, weak, impotent matter could, first of all, create itself, which is a logical impossibility, and then sustain itself over time, and also comprehend the whole of creation. I mean, only one who is absolute and omnipotent and omniscient and all of the other absolute attributes of perfection, only one who possesses all of those can do that. And as Ustad says here, that being has to be absolutely mujarrad from matter, absolutely isolated from matter, has to be free from the constraints of time and space, and has to be ahad and wahid in ways that we have described, sort of ad infinitum before. So yeah, I mean, they're asking us to believe the absolute impossible, and we can't do that because the truth contradicts that. What we see before our eyes contradicts that.
Maybe to add a little bit to it, these are all attributes that imply perfection, and when a thing is perfect, it does not change, because it's perfect. It cannot be spoiling, because if it changed, it would be spoiling, but perfection implies it does not spoil. And if it is perfect, there is nothing further to go. It doesn't get better. Therefore, it does not change. And all of these attributes imply that that whoever has these attributes is free from change, right? One of the words is immutable, right? Is immutable. If it is necessary, if it is free from matter. And the counterpart to this is we observe demonstrably, observably, experimentally in the universe that we live in that matter is changing, right? So if the one who created this all, if we expect the one who created this all and is sustaining it all to be immutable, to have these attributes, because if he does not have these attributes, he will be changing himself and not be able to sustain it, because it is at the level of perfection, the harmony is at the level of perfection. Then we can demonstrate that the creator of this universe is not in the universe. The creator of matter is not in matter. The sustainer of matter is not in matter. It is something of a different kind, right? It has to have these attributes of perfection. And matter changes, therefore matter is not perfect, therefore matter spoils and cannot sustain other things.
Yeah, Mustafa, when you said the creator is not matter, not made of matter, and also I thought about, for example, angels, jinns, other creations, maybe they're not from matter. Allah, the creator, also not from those things too, right? And like the creator of not of the kind.
Well, Imam Razi considers angels, jinn, etc. to be physical objects too, physical things too, right? In a sense, they too are not metaphysical. It is just a different dimension that we don't have access to them. We can manipulate them, we can observe them, etc., etc. But they are also made of things that change, that are subject to changing. So this includes them too. It is only God who has these attributes, like wujub, wahda, like maddeden tecerrüd, being isolated or free above and beyond matter, being free above and beyond time and space. It is only God who has these attributes. And anything who does not have these attributes is subject to changing.
Interesting. Inshallah, in the chat, Harun Hocam says, here I abstraction capability of Nursi. The thinkers with such level of abstraction is appreciating the quality of thinking. Especially the last part also. Interesting, it has been a fruitful session, alhamdulillah. We finished the first ray of Ism Qayyum. Colin Hocam, comments? More comments before we finish?
No, it was an excellent session. Thanks to you, and also thanks to Mustafa Hoja, and also to all of the people in chat who've contributed.
Yes, but there's a lot in the chat, mashallah. If you could, I know that you do it from time to time. If you could make sure to share those, I guess we can benefit.
Yes, please, yeah.
Inshallah, after the session. Inshallah, I pray that Allah allows us to feel Ism Qayyumiyya and feel the harmony around us, in the universe, and Allah.
Amen.
Amen.
ما لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم الحمد لله رب العالمين. Thank you again, everyone. Mustafa Jaman.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Muhammed abi.